Merhaba, ben İdil Londra ve İstanbul'da yerleşik bir arabulucu ve eğiticiyim. 31 Ocak'ta başlamış olduğum videolarla iş dünyası ve avukatlar için alternatif uyuşmazlık çözüm yöntemleri, arabuluculuk, müzakere gibi konuları ele alıyorum. Her hafta yayınladığım videolar için bazen konuklarım oluyor. Bugün de benimle bir konuk birlikte. İsmi Andrew Goodman. Andrew'u önce bir tanıtmak istiyorum. Kendisi Nepal'den Kuveyt'e, Nijerya'dan Malezya'ya birçok hükümete danışmanlık yapmış birisi. Hem eğitici, yazıyor, ders veriyor, hem de 25 senelik bir arabulucu. 100'den fazla da arabuluculuk yapmış birisi. Türkiye'de de 2008'den beri oldukça faaliyeti oldu. Adalet Bakanlığı'na, yargıya birçok eğitim verdi, danışmanlık yaptı. Şu anda da Ankara'da A+'da partner. Bizimle görüşmeyi kabul etti. Andrew, welcome and thank you very much for agreeing to talk to me.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
I would like to first start with your involvement in Turkey. How did you get involved with mediation in Turkey, and what kind of work did you do in Turkey?
So in 2008, I was asked, funnily enough, by the Americans, the American Bar Association, to participate in a training program in Istanbul. After that, I went to the Ankara Bar Association. They invited me to speak at an international conference on mediation, and that was a 3-day conference, and that was also 2008, 2009. And then I was asked to come back to do formal training for Turkish mediators in a program which was jointly funded by the British Embassy and the Turkish Ministry of Justice, and that lasted for 4 or 5 years. And since then I've been undertaking private training. I was asked to come and to deliver a speech to the Court of Cassation, and I met with members of the court to discuss the development of mediation in Turkey, and since then I've been advising the mediation department of the Turkish Ministry of Justice.
Okay, very good. So you haven't been only to Istanbul and Ankara, all over the place, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, I've worked in Samsun, in Izmir, Antalya, Gaziantep. I've been to Kayseri. I mean, I have been traveling.
Okay, very good. And this is an over 10-year period,
Yes.
as I can understand.
That's right.
Okay, so you're an insider now.
I'm afraid I don't have a word of Turkish, but
That's fine.
That apart,
Okay.
yes, I travel widely.
Okay, thank you. All right, please tell us what risk management is, Andrew.
In any system of civil justice, which is based on a binary process, the whole system is designed to create a winner and a loser, which means that the moment you enter into the process, the moment you subject yourself to the court ruling by issuing proceedings, you have created a risk that you will lose. Now, you're only going to proceed to the trial of a case on the basis that you or your lawyer thinks you're going to win. But there's a problem with that. When you go to the court, the other side are there, and they think they're going to win, and their lawyer has told them that they will win. So, modern litigation is about managing the risk of whether or not you will lose. Now, it seems to me that if you take risk management as a topic and you move it away from strictly lawyer-like or lawyer-based principles and look at it as a management process, you can apply the same principles in managing risk as you would for any other kind of business. I think that whether they say so or not, these days, lawyers who are involved in contentious business do nothing other than manage risk. If you want to manage risk effectively, you will try and negotiate a settlement that seeks to get you in the best position without having to bear this risk of going to court to fight the case in front of the judge. You need to ascertain what that risk is likely to be in order to mitigate it, to value it, and then to deal with it.
Okay. And how is that different from past approaches to conflict?
I think that in a testosterone-filled society, the importance of winning has been really fundamental. And people fight to win. They hire lawyers to fight cases in order to win. And they lose sight of the fact that somebody's got to lose, and it may well be them.
Yeah.
Business can't afford the risk of losing. It's not simply a question of financial damage, but it can be reputational damage. It can create relationship damage. And over the last 20 years, perhaps 30 years, people have begun to recognize that litigation should not be seen as a means to an end. People really need to understand that for business, there are wider implications of getting involved in long-term disputes that are very damaging, and they need to find an alternative to what is offered by the public justice system.
When you say people, I presume this is like mostly business, right?
I suppose I'm talking about business, but it applies equally to individual citizens. You know,
but also to legal profession, probably.
And to the legal profession. But you have to understand that my home jurisdiction is one of the most expensive jurisdictions in the world. And over the last 30 years, access to justice has become increasingly difficult. In circumstances where you have a costly legal system, where the system cannot deliver within a reasonable time an answer to your problem, then people look for alternatives. And the alternatives are to be found not in the public legal system, but in systems of private justice, which for a century or more have included arbitration, but now include mediation.
Yeah, this is actually where I wanted to come. So how does ADR help risk management?
The people who practice ADR, whether they are the lawyers representing parties or the mediators themselves, they have an understanding that focusing on the dispute may become too narrow for the benefit of the business or for the benefit of the participants. And they enable people to have a clearer understanding of not their positional basis for bringing a claim, but their wider interests. And therefore, ADR practitioners, they change the focus of disputes to make people understand the fuller picture of what is going to affect them. If you think about a photographer, a good way of doing it is to talk about choosing a narrow lens or a lens with a much wider aperture. So you capture the bigger picture, and you understand that when you use a narrow focus, you're only looking at a very small part of what can be seen. So in this jurisdiction, in particular, we would take into account the costs, the relationship damage, reputational damage, stress, things that lawyers don't traditionally take into account when they're trying to value the outcome of a case. But if you build those things into the case and have a clear understanding of the client's wider business interests or their social interests or their family interests, they may discover that what they think is a strong legal case really doesn't deliver the outcome that the client truly wishes. Why? Because when you work in a system which is dominated by lawyers, the courts and the lawyers focus on what is important to them.
Right.
It's not the same, or may not be the same, as what is important to the client. The client may have a very different view of what is important, and it may be that the legal system by itself cannot deliver it. Now, this is as true of Turkey, perhaps even more so, because of the culture of family relationships, business relationships, and I think the overriding need to maintain a sense of relationship, strong relationship, beyond the other side of the dispute. You know, disputes fracture relationships. Court systems are divisive. ADR processes and ADR outcomes are cohesive. Anybody that mediates is helping to mend society. And with respect, that is something that Turkey, amongst the nations, really needs at the moment.
Okay. How come a insurance-related concept came to define alternative dispute resolution? Because we mentioned risk. How did it come about? You have a little bit alluded to it, like
Yes.
risks, costs, etc.
Yeah.
But how did it become so dominant in the last 20, 30 years?
I think really everything is now driven by cost. So in this jurisdiction, we had fundamental changes to civil jurisdiction, to our civil rules in 1999, where for the first time, the Treasury intervened with the Ministry of Justice and demanded that the running of a civil justice system should be cost neutral. Once you factor in cost within the delivery of justice, then anybody coming into the system is going to measure that as a factor in understanding the risk of winning or losing, which is where I started.
Right. Okay. As a last question, what do you see as success and challenges in Turkey in mediation so far?
I think Turkey has progressed enormously in this field. From when I started visiting Turkey in 2008, I think Turkey is really now one of the leading jurisdictions in the world for mediation development. But it has come at a cost. So for the first 5 or 6 years, thousands of mediators were trained in the expectation of work being provided by the state. So in 2017, we had the first tranche of compulsory pre-action or pre-issue mediation, which was for employment law and workplace disputes. Last year in 2018, as a result of the success of the take-up of workplace mediation, the Ministry of Justice decided to roll out compulsory pre-issue mediation in civil and commercial disputes. I think this really caught the mediation community a little by surprise, and standards need to improve. The quality of performance needs to improve, and specialization needs to feed into a system where people are being asked to deal with blanket civil commercial disputes in areas that they may not be familiar with in terms of their substantive legal background. The Ministry is addressing this. There will be both conferences and programs later in the year. But it seems to me that Turkey has made enormous strides, and I think is amongst the forefront of the world in terms of mediation jurisdictions. And I'm very, very enthusiastic and optimistic about the place of mediation in Turkey.
Okay. And what else can you tell us about ethics?
So, the ethical dilemma for mediation, particularly in Turkey, is that the code of conduct, a fairly rigid code of conduct that you would expect to see amongst legal professionals in any other jurisdiction, has yet to mature amongst the Turkish Bar Associations. That's no criticism, that's simply the way things are and the way things have been for a very long time. It's quite difficult to impose a rigid code of conduct on the mediators if there is no such code amongst the lawyers themselves. But I do think that as foreign models are examined, both by the ministry and in the capacity of private practice, people will come to realize that the ethical dimension of mediation needs to be addressed simply to make sure that the users of mediation have trust in the process and therefore are comfortable by coming to it. That's a matter for partnership between the bar, the mediators and the ministry.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time and for answering my questions.
My pleasure.
Okay. Şimdi Türkçe'ye dönüyorum tekrar. Andrew Goodman benimle birlikteydi. Bizi izlediğiniz için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Bu görüşmeyle ilgili sorularınız olursa idil@adristanbul.com adresinden bana ulaşabilirsiniz. Çok teşekkürler. Haftaya görüşmek üzere.